Tractate Shabbat, page 136. Today we're going to study a lot of definitions. First is definition of nefel. Nefel, in a general definition, it's up to 30 days from the time that the baby was born. In Jewish law, we have several categories. I assume you heard the word pidyon haben, redeeming of the child, which is a biblical precept. That precept originated with the idea that the minutes the baby is no longer nefel, which is the category of 30 days, the Kohen can redeem him, which we will talk later. Another definition, Mitzvah Shem, we're going to study today is the definition of the baby animal, which is the time that the animal considering her baby as a nefel or not, the period of time, especially when it's come to offering or when it's come to practicing shchita and eating for those who wants to eat those animals. We're going to study Mitzvah Shem another definition, which is zikat yibum. The involvement with this one, it's about a situation of levirate marriage, or a situation like two brothers, one of them passed, the wife has no children, the obligation of the brother to marry her, and then if he rejected that, he has to do chalitza. But if he married her, it's act of yibum, and then there is a concept of zikat yibum by the close kin. If you remember when we studied the book of Ruth, there is a lot to do with this concept. So now you ask what one definition has to do with the other. Let's zoom into the daf. We are on page 136. Tanya Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, four lines from the bottom of 135b. כל ששעה 30 ביום באדם אינו נפל, שנאמר בבדוית חודש תבדה, 8 ימים במה אינו נפל, שנאמר ביום השמיני והלאה ירצה לקורבן. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel tells us a very clear definition. If a baby was born up to 30 days, we are in a state of quandary. We do not know if that baby will survive or be a regular living person or not. So up to that point, it's under the definition of special period of time. It's called nefel. Nefel meaning you are not sure if he is going to pass that border and make it. Because of that, we said the Torah tells us in the book of Bamidbar, book of Numbers, chapter 18, that the time that we need to redeem the child, the Torah tells us that the firstborn child belongs to Hashem, and we have the representative, which is the Kohen, and we have this act of pidyon haben. So the Torah said, mi ben chodesh, from the 30 days and onward, this is the time that they have to have this act of pidyon haben. In an animal, it goes from 8 days, which is any animal deliver a baby, let's say a baby calf, up to 8 days, it's a question if it survives or not. The Torah said in Leviticus 22, from the 8 days and onward, you can take it as a sacrificial offering. Now, what happened here? There is a concept that's called uvrar lemafrea, which means now from the 8 days in an animal or from 30 days in human, it's retroactively we understand that this is a living person. With that in mind, we have two components here of learning. One is the Rashi and one is Tosfot. Tosfot tells us in Dibur HaMatchil Kol Sheshaha, he goes at length to explain that in the animals only when they pass the period of 7 days, which is from the 8 day and the 8 days itself, and then when the 8 days start, you can go ahead and either nowadays eat it or in ancient time can bring in an offering. Now, when it's come to a baby, there is a long discussion here. Based on Rashi, You have here the Ran and Rabbi Akiva Iger at length. They're dealing with the question, what exactly happened with this baby boy? What exactly changed at the 30 days? Now, what Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, I just again give you the vignette of that. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel said that the assumption is that the 30 days period confirm his living. What does that mean, confirm his living? You may ask a question, so how come we do a Brit Milah? Or how come we do all kind of things during that period and hold that as a regular baby? The answer is, we have in Judaism a different time, a different period under different category, and here we talk, remember, in halacha, in Jewish law. So Tosfot concluded, as an example, if you have a mourner, so let me read direct from Tosfot. It said, Linyan Avilut, the law of mourners, אפילו רבי עקיבא מודה דהווה כלפני 30 משום דהלכה כדברי המקל באבל. When it's come to law of mourning, we are not obligated, we are not mourn over a baby that God forbid was born and die in the 30 days period. Trace a scenario that a baby born, let's say Reuven and Tamar, married, they have a baby, and all of a sudden, after the brit and after everything passed by, the 29 days of the baby, boom, passed away. So beside of burying the baby, we are lenient in that, which is, we do not act as a mourner at all. With that in mind, the Gemara asks a question. Ha lo shaha sfeika have. What happened here? If is that to say that if the child did not yet remain alive for 30 days, it's considered as uncertainly whether or not it is a stillborn with regard to several halachot. So now we ask a question. We just turned to 136. A mimhal heichemalin. So how come we do the Brit Milah, the circumcision of the baby? Rashi and Rabbeinu Hananel ask this. What's the key question here they ask? About Shabbat. You remember we studied that Shabbat and the Brit Milah, in order to do the Brit Milah the 8 days when everything is fine, the Brit Milah overrides Shabbat. Wait a second. This is a question if the baby is nefel or not, if the baby is going to make it or not. So if he's a nefel, he's not going to make it. So there is a prohibition on Shabbat to do damages called chabura. Remember we talk about it. So why you do chabura when it's not shelo b'mkom mitzvah, when it's not a real mitzvah? So it doesn't mean that every baby born we cannot circumcise, because the Torah said clearly ubayom hashmini, there has to be the 8 days. Here they only ask, according to Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, he said that the whole idea of Brit in Shabbat, it's since we said that every baby is a safek nefel, if it's question if survive or not, so we ask specifically on Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel what he meant by that. So Rav Ada bar Rava explained, and he said, Amar Rav Ada bar Rava malin oto mima nafshach. We go ahead and circumcise the baby. The reason is follow. Im chayu shafir kamail. Im lav mechadech babasaru. Let's think together. If this baby is going to survive, so he did the brit properly, which is the 8th day, he is to do the brit. But if he's going to be a nefel, which means, God forbid, if the baby is going to die, so we consider that as someone who cut off a part of the corpse, and a cutting part of the corpse is not acting as making a damage on the body. Again, what happened is most of the baby going to survive. That's a given. So therefore, since we know that most of the baby is going to make it, so therefore, it's the only issue here is we said in Shabbat this concept is called Natilat Neshama, the taking away the soul, taking away the living. But here it's not such a thing, because it's a corpse. And if you tell me it's an issue of dash, which means he separate the blood from the body, so the Minchat Chinuch asks, so how come that's not applied to a corpse? But in short, what we try to say here is he tried to rationalize why we need to circumcise the baby on Shabbat, even it's a question about being a nefel or not. Ve'ela, the Tanya, we need to bring a source from Tosefta Shabbat that said, Safek ben Shiva, Safek ben Shmona, which is, in those days, they are not sure how to count the month. And nowadays, there is a technology that tells us clearly what month or what about the week she is expecting the baby. We go so crazy that there are people who, which is wrong, they have already pre-planned for breed before the even baby is born. So here you have a question, if it's a 7 or 8, which is the concept of 8 months is a big question, because usually if you go by the even modern technology, if the baby was born the 7th month, it goes to incubator, but it's going to survive. 8 months, the doctor are very strongly pushing for a mother to somehow manage it to go to the 9 months, because 8 months it's always a problem. So therefore they said, if it's a question, Ein mechalelim alav et Shabbat. Since it's a doubt, it's debate, so therefore we are not going to override Shabbat by Brit Milah. Amai, why we don't do the Brit? Nimhalei mima nafshach. You may say that we should circumcise the baby regardless. Why? Im chayhu shafir kamail. If he's a living, so it's good that he make the Brit. Ve'im lav mechatech babasaru. If not, it's just touching the dead body, the corpse body. So here we have several points. The first point is the Rashi. Rashi here used the word klomar, and Rashi said, "Im kalu lo chadashav shafir kamail." So in my book, Biurei Klomar b'Rashi al Hashas, I elaborate on that point in Rashi. The whole concept of kalu lo chadashav, which means that we know clearly it's going to make it, but here we are not so sure. So Rashi have a lot of question on that. I just give you the abbreviation. The abbreviation is that, take for example a goses, someone who's a question of short time is going to pass, but he's still breathing. He's maybe connected to a ventilator or respirator or whatever it is. So even the rov goses sim lamut, most of the people who are at that state, they're going to die, but we are not allowed to go ahead and do any passive euthanasia, which is we're not allowed to do active act such as disconnecting respirators, such as expediting the demise. It's all under the category which is some type of act of killing. The baby was born at the 8th month. It's not considering an act of killing, but we have to think how we treated a situation like that from that period until it passed the 30 days. Another example that Rashi, we derive from this Rashi. The Torah said if you have a mother that she is pregnant, an advanced pregnancy, so the Torah said ki natzu anashim yachda, if the people are fighting, and all of a sudden v'nagfu isha hara v'yatzu yiladea, and they hit a pregnant woman, and as a result of that she miscarried the baby. So the Torah said we treated now the baby that was miscarried in that sense, not act as a nefel. You may ask, who knows what's going to happen to the baby? But because it's the active act so now, the same apply to a nefel. Since a baby was born, so if bechezkat chai in one hand, you say that we wait for the 30 days and then it's a regular human. But let's say if he passed, so we don't see Shiva. We bury, we don't see Shiva. So you see here, this is the issue that Rashi have here with the concept im chayu. What exactly involved here? In any case, Omar Mar Brei de Ravina Ana v'Rav Nechume bar Zecharia Targemina Mimhir hachena memalin ale. So we go ahead and circumcise the baby, which is that it's a question if it's a 7 or 8 months. Why? לא נצרכה אלא למכשירי מילה. As we explained several days ago, when it's come to the Brit, there is a process. One of the acts in the Brit Milah is the preparation for the Brit. You remember we talk about machshirei milah. So here you ask a question: does the moral allow to go ahead and prepare the knife, or do all the needs in order to prepare the proper Brit? It's a question. Why? Again, in a modern technology, even in this very day, in 2013, you see that they go either by 7 or 9. So they said, Va'aliba de Rabbi Eliezer. That's go by the Rabbi Eliezer, what we said earlier, if you remember when we studied page 130, that we're allowed to go ahead and desecrate the Shabbat even for machshirei milah, even for preparation for the Brit. So here they come to teach us that this applied, that a baby that's for sure most probably is not nefel. When do you know that? If she passed the 9 months. If she passed the 9 months, you assume that it's not going to be a nefel, and therefore you're allowed to go ahead and mechalel Shabbat, desecrate the Shabbat. But now what happens if it's a suffix? If it's not clear that if it's a 7 months or 8 months, now when it's come to machshirei milah, to prepare all the tools, the utensil for the Brit, you do not go ahead and desecrate the Shabbat. Why? Because if it turned to be a nefel, you are basically, by doing all this preparation, you're violating Shabbat. Now, the foundation of all of that, if any one of people who attend this shiur or the viewers wants to go a little next step with that, because it's a highly recommended, you see the Shulchan Aruch Siman Shin Lamed Seif Zayin Biur Halacha. The Shulchan Aruch, the code, chapter 330, is dealing with all of that. He gives us several examples. Again, I'm giving you the vignette. If you have mapolet, if it's a situation that the building, God forbid, collapse. I used to live in Harnof in Jerusalem. And one morning, I'm talking about 27, 28 years ago, something like that, they just built a neighborhood. And all of a sudden, big building, boom, collapse. Out of nowhere. So God forbid, imagine that that happened on Shabbat. You don't know if there are people there or not people there. So you have a question. So even it's a suffix, even it's not clear, the halacha is you go ahead and you go inside the building, which involve violations of Shabbat, but you do that in order to maybe save someone from that mapolet, from that situation. Now, you see, in one hand on Shabbat, that's the issue that Biur Halacha involved here. Because in one hand you see on Shabbat that you go ahead and save someone, may save someone from mapolet, yet when it's come to do machshirei milah for the question of a baby that was born in about 8 months, you said you don't do that. So, by the way, in an ancient time, it was a very difficult to make the baby as a living creature when he was born at the 8 months. As you know, those who have children know very well I'm blessed, Baruch Hashem, with 5. So I went through that. Part of the process of the development of the fetus is the lungs. And according to what my little understanding is, the 8 months is the time that the re'ot, the lung, develops. So therefore, in ancient time, if the baby was born in 8 months, it was a very serious issue to make it as a regular living person. So here we enter to that domain, to that question. Amar Abaye Ketanai. So this go by the Machloket Tanaim. Now we try to juxtapose to situation of animal. How? So the Torah said in Vayikra, in Leviticus 11, וכי ימות מן הבהמה אשר ילחם לאוכלה, הנוגע בנבלתה יטמע עד הערב. So the Torah said that if during the period of time the animal deliver a dead animal, so anyone who touched this dead body, he is in a state of ritual impurity until the evening's time. The GEMARA tells us in the Tractate Chulin, there is a special chapter, it's called Elu Trofim. They said that if you take something that is a treif, is a treifa, but you slaughter it according to halacha, that purified from the state of nevela, which means if if you have a dead body of an animal and you go ahead and you slaughter it properly, let's say the animal is running, somebody shoot the animal. You're about to slaughter it properly, somebody else shoot it. Or the animals die, delivers a baby and it's dead. You go ahead and do the regular shchita, the regular process of slaughtering. You change the status from war, from the status of nevela, which is a dead body, which means that anyone who touched it became impure, to a state of treifa, which means treifa meaning the animal that it's not kosher for food, not kosher for offering, yet treifa, if a person touched the treifa, he is not become ritually impure. Is that clear? Mm-hmm. So they said here, we derive from that what Ravada Ba'ara speak about the dead animal, and he said that she'en shchitato metaharto, that by slaughtering that animal, that's not purified from the status of ritual impurity of a dead body of animal. It's like if you put it on the offering on the altar, it's not considering an offering because it's like a nevela. The GEMARA said in Bchorot, page 8, they said that since animals have a period of time, but it changed from animal to animal, it's a different period of time. So therefore, we treated individually in that sense. But he said here, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon omrim, shchitato metarato. They disagree, and they said, as we said earlier, that by slaughtering that animal, their ritual status changed. So anybody who touched that is no longer become ritually impure. My love behakam. Now we try to juxtapose the two disputation. Demar, which is Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon hold, Savar, Chayu, that if this nefel, this baby was born, even he is not making it, but still at this very moment he is alive, and therefore shchitato metarto. That the Tanakama tells us that if you take bemat mea, if you take impure animals, so if you slaughter it, you purified it, and they juxtapose to the 8 days, to the 8 months. Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda disagree. Umar, Savar, Metu. Meant the opposite. The Tanakama hold that it's considering as a dead. So the language of Chayu is a living, that it's not considering an nefel, but it's considering as a regular animal. So they said here, you may ask a question, that's by the way the Tosfot question, how come you go ahead and do the Brit Milah since it's a question of nefel? So they said here, it's a we try to compare the two. Amarava, since we have here a disputation in regards to ritual impurity, it's also a disputation here in regard to eating it, which is if slaughtering that animal changed the status from nevela to or not. So the same apply that if it's a living and they slaughter it, if you're allowed to eat it or not. But according to everyone, it's considering that is a dead body, which means that if they slaughter the animal, you're not allowed to eat it. Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda, Rabbi Elazar bar Rabbi Shimon, Savrei ki treifa. They hold that it have a status of treif. Treifa laf al gav de metai shchitata metarta chana meloshna. Even treifa is considering dead for several things, such as eating. But as far as the slaughtering, if the slaughtering process was properly made, so is no longer carried the ritual impurity. V'Rabbanan, and the sages hold, lo dame le treifa. They said you cannot compare it to treifa. Why? Treifa aita l'shat hakosher, hay lo hay l'shat hakosher. Which means you take the animal, and the animal was treifa, which means the animal was okay. But then the mashgiach went through the dead body, and he realized that something is a hole in the intestine, so ben pekua or whatever it is. So he is not continuing the process of slaughtering that animal, which means it was a certain time that animal was ready for slaughtering, and it's called sh'at kosher, and that moment was fine and can be a kosher meat. Versus nevela, which is a dead body of animal, the sages said that's never had the opportunity to be kosher at the first place. So therefore, you cannot change the status of touching it being ritual impurity the moment you go to a regular process of slaughtering, because the sages said, come on, the dead animal, anyone who touch it, it's already carry ritual impurity. So how good is it to make it a kosher slaughtering process? What that doesn't make sense, right? So they said, hi nefel, and here in the status of the nefel, lo hayta lo shata kosher. It's never have the last opportunity. Why? Because the minute that she delivered the baby, it's already dead in that sense. So therefore, if you go to the process of slaughtering, it doesn't make it pure. You're going to tell me that from the time that it was before even delivery the baby, it's already considered a treifa. Hatam yesh b'mina shchita acha and b'mina shchita, which means it's always carried the state of impurity. Why? Because there are other type of animal in that species that they may turn to be a treifa, which means that it was a time that there is a possibility for those animals to be slaughtered properly, and this one not. But here, if it's a nefel, it's considering from the very beginning of the process that it's impure, and it's always remain in impure, tamid yishaer betumato, and therefore the slaughtering of that dead body will not change the ritual status. So the question is that the sages disagree with Rabban Shimon and Gamliel, that he hold that any baby that was born from animal until 8 days, it's a question if it's nefel or not, even it's slaughter, but if the baby was born, the baby calf, let's say, was born, and you slaughter it properly a day, let's say 4th day, yes, he hold that it's forbidden to eat because it doesn't pass the border of a living creature, which is the 8 days, or lo, or not. If you hold that they are in the disputation, and they hold that if it's safek nefel, if it's a chance to be nefel, and therefore you're allowed to go ahead and eat it, halacha kemoto and halacha kemoto, the halacha follow his teaching or not? Tashma. So come and see. Egel shenolad biyom tov. If a calf was born during the festival, shochatim oto biyom tov. You can go ahead and slaughter it on Yom Tov if you need it for ochel nefesh. So Rashi said here you're dealing with ben pekua, that it's mutar be'achila. Why? Because if it was prepared in advance before Yom Tov, for Yom Tov, it's fine. It's not considering a muktzeh. It's not considering that it's set aside. So even usually it wasn't ready before the entrance of the holiday or the Shabbat, and then it only became ready during the Shabbat. So usually it's considering a muktzeh. It's like set aside. But since it was in advance, ben hashmashot, before the entrance of the Shabbat Yom Tov, so it's called heleachel gavimo, that it can be eaten on the side by eating its mother, because if you slaughter the mother animal, so the baby that was in her womb is kosher because it's part of her womb. So even the baby, after slaughtering the animals, the baby is out, and you can go ahead and slaughter it in the regular process. So it's not considering a set aside, it's not considering a muktzeh. Hacha b'mayaskinan. So here, what we are talking about, the kimlei begavei shekalu lo chodashav, that the persons know in advance that the period of that calf was complete. So in our days, there is a concept called hafraya melachutit, artificial process of fertility.
Insemination.
Artificial insemination. So what happened is, this one is not considering a nefel according to Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, because he hold the nefel only a baby that completes that period of time. So by the way, the GEMARA said in other places, it was a man, married man and woman, it was about 12 months after they have relations that she have a baby. And the question is, they are not together for 12 months. So you may ask a question of mamzerut, if it's a legitimate child. So the GEMARA there tried to get into the domain that it's stuck in her womb, the sperm, for a certain period of time, which was a big discussion. So here, back to our subject, we said that when it's a artificial insemination, right, a situation like that, the kimle begaveh, that the person who come to slaughter that animal know in advance that this calf already complete the period of time. Tashma. So we have this disputation between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon. If it's a firstborn of animal, pure animal, that it was born with blemish, so if we see that blemish on festival, we allow to go ahead and do slaughtering. Why? Because think about it. If you need to do slaughtering, how the process take place? You need to give it to the Kohen, and it's considering a kodashim, some animal's body that is consecrated. So if they have a blemish, so you have to do shechita bachutz, you have to do out of the courtyard, and it's a change of status to chulin. It's no longer a consecrated animal. So here they said, Veshavim, both of them agree, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon, she'im nolad umumo imo, that if was born on a festival, carried the blemish with him. So they said, shezeh min hamuchan, that you can go ahead and slaughter on Yom Tov. Here too we see that it's not considering a nefel, also according to Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, because it's a clear knowledge that the time completed. Tashma. The Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Halacha ke Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. They said that halacha is according to Rashbag. So because they used the word halacha, michlal de pligei, which means that it was a disputation. Shma mina, you learn from that clearly that it was a disputation. So according to the sages, a regular baby born, it's not considering sofek nefel. Why? Because you figure out that most of the delivery was properly, and the baby was going to survive. Omar Abaye. So now Abaye elaborate of this machloket between the sages and Rabban Shimon Gamliel. He said, "Nofal min hagag o achalo ari." If God forbid he fell from the roof, or just for the sake of understanding, a lion ate it, which means the baby was dead during the 30 days from the delivery by an external entity. So, divrei hakol chayu. So according to everyone, it's considering a living. So, and soon you see the application of that. Ki pligei, what's the machloket? Shepihek v'met, which means he is like, in our language, is like yawn, and all of a sudden, boom, he's dead. Which means that even the time that he was living, pull out to deliver the baby, and right upon the delivery, you see a very little sign that he is alive. Rashi said here the word klomar, and I really elaborate at length in my book what exactly happened, what's the process in my book Bira Klomar Rashi al Hashas. So Rashi here said that the involvement with that is very little. You see the baby, she delivered the baby, and all of a sudden you see a very small sign, but and then he is like act of yawning or something like that, and he's dead. So we compare that to a regular terminally ill baby. So and the big question that most of the Farshim, and I here elaborate a lot, the Rabbeinu Yonah, the Ritva, the Riv, the Milchamot, the Razah, all these different Mefarshim, Riv, they're dealing with, first of all, the comparison between lion eating it or live for a very short time and die. How you compare these two. But the whole idea of some external entity that involved with that's the big debate, big question. Mar, which is the sages, Savar Chayu. The sages hold that it's a living creature. Umar, which is Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, Savar hold Metu. It's considering it's a dead. Because you're thinking that it's most probably in a status of Neifel, Leman of Kamina. What's the difference? You may ask, why I need to know all of that? The answer is, Lifto min hayebu. Oh, so what's involved here? If the father of that fetus, of that little baby, die, and now you're considering that as a baby, so it's a question if she needs to go ahead, his brother need to marry her or not. Now I show you a little bit the complication of that after we finish the next paragraph, and you see what's involved here. Nafal min hagag or achalo ari, divrei hakol chayu. Everyone said that it's considering a living person. V'arav papa b'ravuna b'drav shoy klau levei rava b'red ravidi b'ravin v'avid letitlaig labimavad yeshiva. They entered to his house, and he prepared very expensive 3 calves that in the 7 days of the delivery, which is the high quality. Ve'amrela, and Tosfot here elaborate on that, if we wait until the evening time, which is the eve of the 8th, we can eat it. But because it's before the 8 days, so as much as I love to eat it, Now, because it's not past the border of Nefel, it's not 8 days, so even it's an awesome, expensive, beautiful, delicious, supposed to be, calf, I'm not going to eat it. Now, back to our subject, if you tell me that the baby was yawning and then he died, so it's considering as a dead body, so if it's ate by a lion or die because he fall from the roof, it's just extreme examples. So we understand that that's from outside, gorem chitzoni, something from outside happened. But if he died naturally, he just yawned and he died, so it's a safek nefel. Now you see what's involved here. Number one, the issue here is, in one hand we have the issue of arayot, which is we are forbidden by Torah law to have sexual relation within family. So in one hand, if you have two brothers, Reuven and Shimon, and Reuven marry, for the sake of understanding, Tamar, and Reuven has a baby, but the baby died at the time of delivery, and Reuven also passed away at that time, now you enter the domain of a very serious issue, which is, in one hand, is a forbidden for Shimon to marry his brother's wife because it's immediate family. On the other hand, it can turn around and be a great mitzvah of redeeming her, which is perpetuation of the deceased by having Tamar his wife. Now the question is, regardless if Shimon wants to do it or refuse to do it or allowed to do it, the question entered the domain if you consider that baby a nefel or not. Because if it was a regular baby that died, therefore she is in a sense forbidden to Shimon.
Because she had a child. Because
he has a child. But if it's no child, if it's a definite nefel,
right,
then he turn around and Shimon has the obligation, and if he refuses to do it, he needs to do chalitza to her. Brei Rav Dimi Bar Yosef Yenuka, he has a baby. Unfortunately, it never happened to anyone. Before the 30 days, the baby died. The father went ahead, and what did he do? He did the mourning period. Rav Dimi Bar Yosef said to him, what do you want? You want to eat the food for the mourners? You know, the mourners have a special food. He said, the whole idea of Aveilut, act of mourning, is rabbinic. And the Kesef Mishna said that if it's Safek Aveilut, if it's a question of mourning or not, we go lenient. And the Ramban explained it in the Torah Adam, because the minute you enter the domain, you may mourn for nothing, and we're not supposed to mourn for nothing, especially this month, the month of Adar, month of celebration, right? So you're not mourn for nothing, that's not Judaism. Amar lei, so the son said to his father, Abdimi Bar Yosef, Kibli bey, shekaru lo chadashav. I knew that it's a complete on a time, which means the mother did it and delivery was in the 9 months. Excuse me, I know exactly the time of the relations, and I know exactly that it was 9 months, and I know the whole process. So therefore, that's the reason why I mourn over that baby. The Rabbi Tukochinsky, may rest in peace, in the book Gesher Chaim, Bridge of Life, he elaborates on that a lot, and I really wish to those who wants to dig in this sugya to read in his book. A similar story, Rav Ashi Ikla be Rav Kahana. Rav Ashi came to a house of Rav Kahana. Itra be Milta begot Latin Yomin. Something bad happened, which means they want to imply that during the 30 days period the baby died. Chazi diativ kamitabil lavei. Rav Kahana saw that he is, Rav Ashi saw that Rav Kahana sitting and mourn over that baby. Omar lo savar lemar lead amar Rav Yudah amar Shmuel lachar Rabban Shimon Gamliel. What the Rabbi Shimon Gamliel said, that it's a safek nefel, so why you mourn over that? Omar le Rav Kahana said, Kimli begavei, shikaru lo chadashav. I know clearly that he completed the period, which means I know clearly that the delivery was in a proper way, and I know the very clearly that the whole process took place in a proper manner, and therefore I'm mourning over that. I'm certain that its month of a gestation were completed and is not to be considering a stillborn. Itmar. Now we go to the machloket, and you see this upcoming sugya. It's beautiful. Just zoom in and bear with me. Met בתוך 30 ועמדה ונתקדשה. Listen carefully what happened. Baby die within 30 days after birth. So what happened is the mother lost the baby, and she was also a widow at that time. So now what happened? Before they decided whether or not she is obligated to a levirate marriage, guess what she did? She stood and betrothed to another man. Now what do you do? Again, let's understand. She was married. She was pregnant. She was about to deliver the baby. The husband passed. She delivered the baby is dead. Before we determine her status, if his brother needs to go ahead and do yibum with her, she went ahead and she betrothed to another man. What do you do now? Omar Ravina Mishmei de Rava. Ravina said on the name of Rava. We just turned the page to 136b. He said, Im eshet Yisrael hi choletzet. Im eshet kohen hi ena choletzet. Listen carefully. He said as follows. A regular Yisrael, as you know, we have a status of Kohen and we have a status of Yisrael. Yisrael that, let's say, divorced his wife. Let's call him name. Let's say Reuven married Hadassah and he divorced her. And then he wants to return back his divorcee. Meanwhile, she didn't have anybody. Can he do that?
No. Oh wait, no, he's not a Kohen, so yes he can.
Can, it's even a mitzvah.
Right.
Machzir grushato, it's a mitzvah. Okay. If he's a Kohen,
no.
Kohen is forbidden to marry a divorcee. So if the Kohen, this Reuven, the Kohen was mad, and he went to Bet Din and he divorced Hadassah, and then day later he realized that he made a mistake, it's too late. Clear so far?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, if that, you remember we talked about Tamar and Reuven, if that Tamar who went ahead and delivered a baby, dead baby, right? So if Reuven, the husband of Tamar, is Israel, then she have to do chalitza from the brother of her dead husband, late husband, because it's a safek if this baby was nefel or not. Why? Because if it was nefel, as long as she's not go to the process of chalitza, she cannot go ahead and marry anybody else. However, if she is a wife of a Kohen, meaning if the husband proven is a priest, is a Kohen, so if she is doing that act of chalitza, is forbidden to the Kohen. Why? Because the Kohen is forbidden to marry divorcee and woman that did chalitza. Which means, if it's a woman that the husband passed and he was a Kohen, right, and she went ahead and she had some act of chalitza, then any other Kohen cannot marry her because she is already chalutza. So therefore, she cannot do this act of chalitza. Why? Because she will be forbidden for the second one. ורב שרביה משמי דרבה אמר אחת זו ואחת זו חולצת. Rav Shravya, in the name of Rava, said regardless that both this, the woman who married to Israelite and the woman who married to a Kohen, perform chalitza. Why? Because the prohibition against married woman not released from her bond of levirate marriage is a stringent one, and the fact that her husband is a Kohen is not taken into consideration. So here we're dealing with the concept, it's called zikat yibum. Why? Because it's basically kesher midoraita, is a relationship that involved with the issue of either mitzvah or violation of Torah law. So let's go to the next step, because the Rishonim have a lot of discussion. They said, what happened if it wasn't a full act? When we said in Kadcha that she betrothed, you know that in the process of Kiddushin you have a process, right? One, it's that make the Kiddushin, the betrothed act, but we have also chuppah. Okay? So if it was involved with the chuppah, she cannot return to their previous husband, and she doesn't need to have any act of chalitza. But here we're talking about kiddush belo chuppah, that it was a kiddushin without the chuppah. So now you ask, if it's a nefel of Kohen, why not? So you have to say that it has to involve here with nefel chai, which means that he released the mother from the act of Levirites. Tosfot here asked a question. Tosfot said, we have a concept of yachid verabim alacha kerabim. If you have a single sage versus the majority, we go by the majority. So here you have Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel is the at yachid. Why we go halacha according to Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel?
Right.
So the Tosfot explained that, especially lechumra. So they said, if is a chance that he's dead, so we go also Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. So it means here, in a sense of stringencies, we want to be strict in order to avoid any violation of Torah law. So we go by yachid. But you can go around and say that also lenience. When? Because if it's a mourning period, so what do we go? You go always by leniency. You go by the leniency. So now the Gemara said, Amar le Ravina le Rav Shravya. Ravina said le Rav Shravya, Be'orta amar Rav Achi. Which is in the eve, Rav said that regardless, they have to do chalitza. Letzafra hadar bei. In the morning he changed his mind and he said that the wife of a Kohen cannot do chalitza. That's the way I said earlier. Amarlei shritua. So you basically allow a wife of a Kohen. He was very angry, and he said, did you permit the wife of the Kohen without chalitza, despite the fact that Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel deems the baby as stillborn unless he survived the age of the 30 days. So since you have violated that ruling, now he said, it may be God's will that you continue along this path and permit the eating of forbidden fat, which is that's something that is not even a doubt that is forbidden, which means that he was very much opposed. That's the Tosfot Arosh explained. Now, we learn in the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda matir, Rabbi Yehuda allow in androgynous. You remember that androgynous is a half and a half, Rabbi Yehuda allow. So, Omar Rav Sheizvi, Omar Rav Chizda, lo lakol amar Rabbi Yehuda androgynous zacharu. It's not true that all the times androgynous hold the status of a male. Because you remember, it's half and a half. The only way he said that he's considering a male is in law of the Brit Milah. That we have to go ahead and override Shabbat in order to mail this half male, half female baby. She'im ata omerken, because if you tell me that in every status is considering as a baby male, ba'arachin yarech, which means if someone put a valuation, is that correct? The word valuation over that baby, and it's androgynous, you have to hold it in that way too. ומנהלן דלא מערך. And from where we derive that it's not valulated. So they said, the Torah said in Vayikra, in Leviticus chapter 27, they said, Vaya erkecha hazachar. You shall go by the erachim valulated in the male. Hazachar velo tomtom veandroginus. We derive from that it has to be male, in a way straight, pure male. Not someone that has the status of tumtum or androgynous, that is both, which is all learned from the hay. Hazachar, the letter hay. לא יהיה בערך, יכול לא יהיה בערך איש, אבל בערך יהיה בערך אישה. Maybe you hold it in a status of female, which is less, in monetary values. Talmud lomar hazachar v'im nekevai. They said the male in the following verse, and if she is a female, then your validation shall be for 30 shekels. That's the Torah said in Leviticus 27. So they said from the superfluous, appear superfluous word ve'im and if, we derive zachar vadai nekeva vadait velo tomtum vadruginus. Only a definite male or definite female, but not a status of tomtum or androgynous, which are categorized are neither male nor female. So we said ustam. We just turned the page 137. Ustam Sifra Rabbi Yehuda. And we said that any unattribute halacha that cited in Sifra, which is Torat Kohanim, generally reflects the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Omar Rab Nachman bar Yitzchak, Af Anana Antanina, Kol Ksherin Lekadesh Chutz Mecher Shotev Katan. Everyone is capable of the act of Kiddushin, fit to sanctify the waters of purification offering, except of a deaf mute, incurable or a minor. All of that apply to people who doesn't have a mental status, or someone who's not hearing deaf, or a minor. Rabbi Yehuda machshir bekatan ufusel b'isha androgynous. Rabbi Yehuda deems a minor, but deems a woman and androgynous unfit. So in other words, Rabbi Yehuda does not consider the legal status of androgynous to be like a male. Shma Mina, so GEMARA conclude that's the final word, that the only way we consider androgynous is only the act of breed, and not other thing. Mishna Milah. What's the different milah? Because the Torah said Mishum dichtiv v'mo lachem kol zachar. So by using the word kol, every male, so circumcise yourself for every male, the Torah said in Genesis 17, interpreted every male as the idea that anyone who could possibly be included in the category of a male. So that's the only one that we included androgynous. Now we're going to practical halachot. Practical halachot, first we discuss the situation of eating animals before the passing of time of nefel. Let's say if someone slaughters an animal and it's below than 8 days, which is in a category of maybe a nefel. So Rambam said in Hilchot Ma'achalot Asurot, chapter 4, Shmonat Yamim Ba'be'ema. It is prohibited to partake an animal flesh in a newborn animal that has not yet lived for 8 days. It is still considering potentially nefel, not viable, and therefore it's prohibited to partake its flesh due to the concern that for the prohibition of eat an unslaughtered animal in accordance to the opinion of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. Then we talk about Brit Milah. It has to be in a certain time. So he said if the Brit Milah of a child after 7 months, a baby born after 7 months of pregnancy is circumcised even on Shabbat, the same is true of a baby with regard to whom is uncertainty whether he was born after 7 or after 8 months. That's Shulchan Aruch Yodah 266. Slaughtering a stillborn, shchitat nefel, slaughtering a stillborn or any animal fetus whose gestation was not full term does not prevent it from causing ritual impurity as an unslaughtered animal. Now we talk about shchitat treifa. When one slaughtered an animal that will die within 12 months, which is the treifa, the slaughter is valid. Although the animal may not be eaten, it does not cause the ritual impurity of an unslaughtered animal, which is nevela. How about a calf? Egel shenolad biyom tov. A calf born on a festival to an animal that was designated for eating may be slaughtered on that day if it is clear that it was gestation was full term. Bechor shenolad ba'al mum. Since the destruction of the temple, Beit HaMikdash, the firstborn of a kosher animal may not be eaten unless it is blemished. A sage may not examine it on a festival to determine if it has a blemish that will permit it to be slaughtered. However, if the firstborn was born blemished, and the sage violated the halakha and examined the blemish on a festival, and determined that it was permanent, the animal may be slaughtered and eaten on a festival. Now we discuss another very serious, painful subject, which is the issue of zikat yibum. So we said, Tinok shemet lifnei 30 yom, if a man died childless while his wife was pregnant, and she then gave birth to a child that lived for 30 days, the child exempt its mother and its father's other wives from chalitza and levirate marriage. However, if the infant died within 30 days, even if it died through an accident, it was not clearly demonstrated to have been viable, and therefore, although its mother may not be married in a levirate marriage, she must perform chalitza due to the safek, the uncertainty. That's the GEMARA final understanding of Abaye's statement. That's the Even HaEzer, Shulchan Aruch Even HaEzer 156. Now we discussed also, in that sense, the eating a newborn animal. A newborn animal that is known to have been carried to a full term may be slaughtered immediately upon birth. If it's not known whether the gestation was full term, it may be slaughtered from the night of the 8th day after its birth. We also discussed the mourning period of a baby, newly born. There is no halachic obligation to mourn a baby that, God forbid, die within 30 days after its birth, because it has the status of potential stillborn. However, if it can be established that the mother carried the child to full term, one mourns the baby as indicated by the incident of the GEMARA. Also we discuss, and that's the last halakha, we discuss the issue of if im Eshet Israel, if a man passed away without children and his wife was pregnant and she gave birth to a child who died within 30 days, and it was not clear whether or not the child was carried a full term, the widow is rabbinically obligated to perform chalitza. This is due to the possibility that the child was not viable. If she becomes betrothed to another man who is an regular Israelite, the brother of her late husband performed chalitza with her, and she marries the man to whom she was betrothed. However, if she becomes betrothed to a Kohen, she does not perform chalitza. This is according to Ravina's statement, and Rava exempt a woman in a case of chalitza. But as we said many times, in those very serious halachot, the person should always ask a prominent posek before making a decision.